Hey budget gardeners, Vita Loca here. Join me today as we plant a lavender hedge. So let's go. The area that we're going to be working in is on the west side of my house. And you can see this is my front walkway. And this certain section has seen a lot of changes this past year. It started in the early spring when we removed 3 small leaf rhododendron that were way too large for this space. And then after that, we moved a bunch of shade-loving plants that were thriving right behind me over here into this section here. The plants did not thrive during the summer months. They were getting too much sun. So I made a video recently showing my process for removing those plants and moving them to other areas of the garden where they could do better. And here we are starting again with an empty slate. But I have to share with you, my initial feeling when I grew all this lavender from seed during the winter months was to have a lavender hedge. I wanted to make a lavender hedge somewhere in a more formal space, more like a walkway garden or a rose bed, something like that. Well, here we are in a walkway garden with an empty slate ready to go. If you want to make a lavender hedge yourself and do it on a budget, there are a few ways you can do it. You can either start it from seed, and I'll put videos down in the description below showing you my process for starting lavender from seed, or you can take cuttings of it. Since I did not have lavender anywhere else in my yard, I wasn't able to take cuttings, and that's why I started them from seed. The variety of lavender we're going to be planting here is called Munstead. You want to always look up what variety of lavender grows well in your area. Lavender is a bit of a diva plant, so you want to make sure you're giving it exactly what it needs. The first thing it needs is full sun. This area gets part sun, so again, it's going to be an experiment to see how it does. I checked the section and it gets about 4 to 6 hours of sun a day, and it's typically in the afternoon hours. I have a feeling the lavender should do okay here. The next thing lavender needs is a well-draining soil, preferably soil that's a little more sandy or gravelly. This is a Mediterranean plant. In other words, it likes a very dry soil. So this bed does have drip irrigation in it, and when we get the lavender planted, I'm just going to make sure I'm not putting it right next to an irrigation line. And then finally, lavender thrives in soil that's actually not very fertile. So you want to make sure you're not putting a ton of fertilizer to the plant each year. When it comes to spacing, you want to space your plants about 12 to 18 inches apart. Pruning lavender is critical. You want to make sure that the plants don't develop a woody base, because once they develop that woody base, you can't be cutting into it. I plan on pruning my lavender plants next spring and every spring thereafter. You can also prune the plants back shortly after they've had their initial flush of blooms. Since these plants are still very young, I don't want to prune them back yet. I'm going to wait until next spring to do their initial pruning. So let's take a look at the space where we're going to be planting the lavender. The space right here is 4 feet deep. And in terms of length, if we were going to plant the lavender all the way to right here where I have a small pond, that would be 17 feet. I'm not quite sure at this moment if we're going to be stopping right here, which is about 15 feet long, or if we're going to continue all the way to the end, which is 17 feet long. But nevertheless, I just want to show you what you will see after the lavender hedge. We have a nice little pond here, and that is my front porch. We also have what I call the bay window flower bed. And then on the other side of the walkway, I just have a whole bunch of different annuals that I've started from seed. And I think that having a lavender hedge on one side of this walkway will look so beautiful. And on the other side of the lavender hedge is just an area that I have dedicated to Black-Eyed Susan or Rebecca. My husband and I installed drip irrigation in here during the spring months. We have a drip line back here that we're not going to worry about today, and we have another drip line down here. It is exactly 12 inches away from the walkway. So I am going to be planting the lavender pretty close to the drip line. And one thing I'm going to be doing is monitoring the lavender. If I need to, I can always cut out this whole entire drip line and move it back a little bit more. But for today, we're just going to leave it in place. We're going to be planting the lavender on this side of the drip line, closer to the walkway. I have the lavender in small 3-inch pots, and can you believe we started these from seed during the winter months? They're just so beautiful. I got the lavender placed, and I used a total of 16 plants that I started from seed. I spaced them 12 inches apart and 12 inches away from the walkway. I was originally going to stop right here, but I ended up extending it. up to the pond, and I can always see how that ends up looking next year. I mentioned earlier that lavender does not like fertile soil or even fertilizer. However, I am going to be putting a small pinch of the Espoma Biotone starter fertilizer in each of the planting holes. In areas that are colder or have a shorter growing season, such as where I live, New Hampshire Zone 5B, you normally want to plant your lavender during the early spring months so that the roots have enough time to establish. Well, here we are, it's the middle of summer. I still want to get my plants in. They're much better in the ground than they are overwintering in their pots. And that's the reason why I'm going to be using the starter fertilizer. I want to help jumpstart those roots so they can start growing faster and establish themselves well before the winter sets in. So we're first going to start with removing the mulch in the area where the lavender is going to get planted. I watered the lavender plants last night, so I know that the roots are good and saturated but not too wet. Also, the soil is wet because the irrigation ran earlier this morning. I'm just going to use a small hand shovel to dig the hole. And as I've been digging, I noticed that it's pretty sandy beneath the soil level, which is actually perfect for the lavender. I'm going to add a small pinch of the Biotone starter fertilizer in the planting hole. And I can go ahead and squeeze the side of the pot and take the plant out. And I'm noticing that the root system is very good. It's not overly pot bound or root bound. If it was, I would need to loosen the roots, but I don't need to do anything at this point. For a planting depth, I want to plant it basically so that the roots are beneath soil level, but I want that crown to be slightly above soil level. I don't want my lavender plants to rot. And if I need to lift the plant up a little bit, I can do that. And now I can go ahead and backfill around it. And after that, I can replace the mulch. I am so excited to be getting this lavender placed in this area of my yard. It's actually been something I've been wanting to do for a long time now. Once again, I'm showing you that I have a drip line right here. So I will be monitoring my lavender plants, and if I notice that they're not doing well because they're getting too much water, I can always remove this irrigation line and just move it back a few inches. Add the Biotone starter fertilizer, squeeze the side of the pot, pop the plant out. We'll go ahead and place the plant, keeping in mind that it's not too deep, and then we can go ahead and backfill the soil around the base. And then replace our mulch. There's something so satisfying about starting a plant from seed and watching that plant just grow and then eventually getting that plant out in the landscape. I can't wait to see what this lavender hedge looks like over time. I have a lot of ideas for the front of my walkway, and you can see that I really enjoy packing it with lots of different plants here. But when it comes to this lavender hedge, I think it just is very nice to just settle on one type of plant in this space. And the best part is we have a little bit of opportunity on the other side of this lavender hedge. So you'll have to stay tuned to see what I end up doing on this side of the garden space. But I really am enjoying the fact that we got the lavender placed here. And I think it's just going to make the space complete. This was such a fun project, and I'm so glad we tackled it together. I'll keep you updated in future videos when it comes time to cutting back or pruning back my lavender plants, and I'll also go over any issues I might be running into. I'll let you know how the irrigation has turned out or what changes I've made, and let me know in the comments below, are you growing lavender in your yard? If so, where do you live and what kind of lavender are you growing? And I'd also love to know, do you prune back your lavender, and if so, when do you do it and how do you do it? And until the next video, make it a great day with gardening.